Hi, it's Roman Bodnarchuk from the Best Half Show. We've got a really special show for you. It's Thanksgiving here in Canada. My partner, Mark Organ, is in Ireland doing a keynote speech, and we've got one of our besties here, Nikki Ballou. This is, I think, your third appearance on our show. You're definitely one of our besties. And Mark and I are really grateful that you'd come here on a Thanksgiving Monday and be with us today. So thanks so much for being here.
Roman, it's an honor being here, man. Thanks for asking me to be here. I'm pumped to have this conversation with you, brother.
Nikki, I got to tell you, you've had an incredible influence in my life. Let me just give you last week as an example. Last week, I had the privilege of being in your incredible course about podcasting and learning about being a guest on podcasting. And one of the things that you taught me, which I'd never thought about, and Nikki, you know I've spent $1 million in personal development. I've gone to the best coaches in the world. But one of the things that you taught me was talk about some of the pain and struggle in your life. So I'm really good at talking about, age 14 to start buying real estate, become a millionaire at 30. Like I'm really good at the highlight story. But I honestly have maybe just blocked it out of my mind, all the pain and struggle. But you explained to me in that course and the rest of the members of why it's so important. Maybe, and I'm going to, for the first time, I'm going to share some of the pain and struggle. And the reason I'm going to do it is because you inspired it. And yesterday I had Thanksgiving dinner with my parents, and I put my phone on the table, and I said, guys, I got to ask you some questions, because honestly, I don't remember some of this stuff. And they said, sure. We hit record and recorded 30 minutes, and it was really powerful. Wow. So anyways, maybe tell people why the pain and the struggle part of our stories is important and why we need to share them.
Well, think about this. We're living in an era where the buyer has evolved. You know, they are a lot more savvy than they ever have been because of the internet, because of the access to information. And traditional slick messaging in business just doesn't land the way that it used to. People are looking for something that's real and authentic. And they want to hear the full truth. They don't want to hear the sanitized version of things. So when you go on a show and you're selling your product, your company, your vision, the first thing someone's going is, who is this guy? Why the hell should I listen to him? If you open yourself up to them and you show some vulnerability about your struggles, they'll relate to you. And they'll buy from you when they can relate to you. They won't buy from you if they put you on a pedestal and they think in their mind, oh God, this guy is 1,000 times better than me. I can never be like that guy. But if they think he's just a man like me or she's just a woman like me, then they're going to buy. And I happen to know, because you and I are friends, a little bit about your origin story. And I think your origin story is absolutely fascinating. So why don't you go ahead and share it with us?
Sure, Nikki. So I had to fact check all this with my parents yesterday. So here's what happened. My mom was born in a refugee camp in Salzburg, Austria. Her father was arrested for stealing meat to try to feed his family. They were escaping from the war in Ukraine. My father was born in a refugee camp in Germany. His parents were also escaping from the war in Ukraine. My grandfather wrote a lot of books that were against the Soviet Union, and he knew that he had to leave. They were going to arrest him. So they came into Canada. My grandparents came to Canada and did a bunch of horrible jobs. And eventually got to Toronto. And my parents, when they had me, my first couple of years were living in a 1-bedroom apartment above a store. The store was called Helen's Delicatessen. It was my grandmother's delicatessen. And she'd get up at 4 a.m. and made all the food and worked 12 hours a day. And above the store was a 1-bedroom apartment on Queen West, Parkdale, we call it today. And in that one, it was only 4 rooms, my parents told me. In that 4 rooms lived me, the baby, my mom, my dad, my grandmother, and my grandfather. That was my early days. And then my parents were able to save $5,000 to buy a small semi-detached house in Mississauga, which to me was unbelievable. And the memories I had back then. And it was a great childhood. The only challenges that I really had was really severe asthma. I couldn't play any sports. Every time I played sports, I'd end up in the hospital. So I was in the emergency because of asthma 30, 40 times a year.
Wow.
Like anytime I tried to do anything athletic, if I went to camp, within a day, they'd send me in an ambulance. It was bad. So it was hard because all my friends were playing sports and doing things. And then the other thing, and these are all things I'd kind of put out of my mind. We were about 8 years old. My dad had a nervous breakdown, and he was taken away for a long
Oh my
time.
God.
And my mom told me one of the things that caused it. I thought it was because of business. My dad was always an entrepreneur, and she told me that her father died, and my dad had to go identify his body, and it was just a traumatic thing for him. So it set us in a bad course. All of a sudden, we had to very quickly move out of our house into a house that wasn't that nice. And my dad was away. Like my dad was in a mental health institution. So my mom with 2 little kids is in this house, and this house was like needed a lot of work. Like I don't know if you remember times of wallpaper, but there was like 10, 11 pieces of wallpaper on top of each other. So just scraping wallpaper. I just remember scraping wallpaper for weeks. But it's when I learned the power of friendship and family. Every night after work, my uncles, my aunts, my family friends would come, and they'd be scraping wallpaper and painting, fixing this house. And then my father finally came back, but he was on lithium, and it was, he wasn't quite the same. He had his glasses on. It was very traumatic for me. But then I was 10 years old, and we were on vacation in Florida. And I remember, I wasn't poor. Like we weren't like, I don't want to play like a poor story, but for me to save $10, how I got the $10, Nikki, was I would go to like vending machines, and I'd go to parking lots. I would find quarters. Like, old people in Florida, they get out of the car, quarters fall out, they leave them. I got $10 in quarters, and I bought my first nonfiction book. First book called Catch Me If You Can, because I saw this guy named Frank Abagnale on late night TV, and he talked about when he was 16 years old, his parents got divorced. He didn't even know they're getting divorced. He was taken into a courtroom, and the judge says to a 16-year-old boy, "Who do you want to live with, your mom or your dad?" He didn't even know they were fighting. He had no idea, and he freaked out, ran out of the courtroom, and it's pretty amazing. It's a great movie now.
Sure, yeah, I saw it, yeah.
So I still have that hard copy of that book, and it just showed me that age and your circumstances. Like this guy literally ran away with nothing, and he did some interesting things. So when I was 14, I read the book at 10. At 14, I saw this ad for Raymond Aaron, and that's one of your friends.
Yeah, sure,
right?
absolutely.
Client, friend of yours, one of your mentors. And Raymond Aaron ran a full-page ad in the Toronto Star, and talked about this 2-day course, a real estate course he was doing at York University. So I went to my parents, and I said, I want to take this 2-day course at York University. And they're like, "You're crazy. You're 14. I think it's for you." But I had the money, and I just did it. And they thought it was nuts. But then I learned from Raymond Aaron, which I have so much respect for. I'm so grateful for, because he changed my life. One of the formulas that he taught me back in that course, I still use 40 years later. I've bought over 100 pieces of real estate, multiple countries around the world, because of just one thing he taught me. Within 90 days of that seminar, I found the property. Of course, I went to my parents, said, "Do you want to do it with me?" And they said no. But I convinced my aunt and uncle to do it with me. And then out of guilt, my parents did go with us, and we did it. But it was that struggle, and it was the pain of watching my dad go through a nervous breakdown, buying that book at 10, and I still have the book. Like the fact that I have this book 40 years later,
amazing.
And I read it cover to cover, because when you pay for something yourself when you're 10, you value it, right? And then because I made the investment in that real estate course, I took it seriously. Like I memorized everything that Raymond Aaron taught me, and all of those struggles, Nikki, it's like that's what led me to where I am today. And I think a lot of times people think, "Oh, I'm too old, or I'm too young, or I have an education," and it's just all bullshit. So anyways, that's the backstory. And I had this conversation with my parents yesterday, and I'm grateful to you that I even had that conversation with my parents yesterday.
I'm glad you had that conversation with your parents. And, you were sharing with me about how it was hard for you to breathe. There was a situation, my youngest son, who you've met, we went to Florida together with him. He grew up with a breathing issue, and he was in the hospital 10, 20, 30 times a year. Thank God he grew out of it. He grew up with something called subglottic tracheal stenosis, which is a narrowing of the windpipe, and he's able to do sports, and he now does sports. But when you were sharing that with me, it just took me back to all those anxious moments I had with my own son, man. That's pretty darn amazing. So thank you for revealing all that. Now, you and I, we both are big fans of one seminal book in the world of personal development. It's called Think and Grow Rich. And you have a very powerful reason why you're a fan of that, and I do too. But I'd like you to share yours with us, if you wouldn't mind.
Nick, you've been in my house, and I've not completed 1,000 books, but I've at least probably read the first couple chapters in about 1,000 books. But if I was to pick one outside the Bible, I would say Think and Grow Rich. Actually, this morning, my 17-year-old son, he's like, Dad, you're sending me too many like Instagram reels and Facebook reels. And I'm like, here's the deal, Carter. I promise I won't send you any more videos if you just read one book. And I said, Think and Grow Rich. The reason I would pick one book.
It's a good deal.
Yeah.
It's a good deal.
Yeah,
I take it.
He hasn't accepted it yet, but I'm working on it. So this is the most important, I think, personal development, success, business book you could ever read. It was published in 1937, and it was done over a 20-year period where Napoleon Hill, and it was commissioned by Andrew Carnegie, the richest man in the world. And to put his wealth in perspective, if you did Andrew Carnegie's wealth in today's dollars, it eclipses like Elon Musk's. Like it would just eclipse Bill Gates. It eclipses all these guys. So these guys like had real money. Like they were very powerful men. So what he did for Napoleon Hill, he gave him access to the 500 most successful men in the world. And he spent 20 years interviewing the 500 most successful men, and he distilled it to 13 principles that they all shared. And one of them, and one of the reasons that I'm so excited about what we're doing together is this mastermind.
Yes.
And you need a group of men to take you to the next level. But I think there's so much wisdom in that book that, my gosh, if you just only read one book this year, for everybody listening, please read Think and Grow Rich. It'll absolutely change your life.
You know, when I was in high school, I came to Canada in 1982, and I went to a school called Overlea Secondary School. It's now called Mark Garneau Collegiate Institute. And when I was in high school, I didn't have a lot of friends here because it was brand new to the country. But there was a man I knew. His name was Roy Mavley. He was he was an Indian fellow, and he was a really good dude. And he gave me a copy of Think and Grow Rich.
Wow.
He inscribed it. But you know what? Like a dummy, I didn't read it for at least a decade. I said, thank you, and this is great. And I just put it on a shelf. But I read it over a decade later, and it plus the influence of my father set me on a path to dream bigger, think bigger. So I'm a huge fan of that book. And I'll come back to something else a little later in our conversation. But here's another thing, Roman, that I think is very important. There's a lot of men that are our age, kind of 50 plus, second half of their lives.
Yeah.
And they have this dialogue in their head. And the dialogue goes something like this. You know what? I've had a good life. Maybe I haven't achieved everything I want to achieve, but I've had a good life. And in any event, it's too late for me. I had this. At 55, I was 50, 60 pounds overweight. And for years, I've been telling myself, you know what? It's too late for me now. I'm too old to get this figured out. And then one day, I reached that point of disgust that you and I have talked about many times. And I made a decision to do something differently. And the first step to success is you make a decision. You got to make a decision. Okay, I'm doing this. Not kick a tire, but make a decision.
Yeah.
The second step is you got to be willing to be bad at it before you're good at it, which means a commitment. You commit to something when you're committing to failing a lot along the way. So I did that. But the third part was very important, and I know you and I are going to talk about this in a minute. I got myself a coach, and I listened to my coach, and I got resourceful, and that's the fourth part, and I figured it out. But this doesn't just apply to men in their 50s who want to fix their health. You have some examples of men having this kind of thinking around their wealth. Do you want to expand on that and maybe debunk this for people?
So a couple things. We have a lot of bad ideas, and sometimes, they say a man kind of reaches his like mental capacity at 15, and some of the ideas we got between 1 and 15 tend to stick in our heads, and we kind of keep these crazy ideas our whole lives. And I know that's true with a lot of my friends. I've had friends for since grade 2, grade 3. And I love my friends. I mean, I'm going to have Thanksgiving dinner with some of my oldest friends in the world today. But I also know we can finish each other's sentences. I know what they think. I know their belief systems. And a lot of our friends, they establish an idea that they heard from somebody, maybe it's their parents, and they haven't evolved. They haven't changed that. And I think successful men challenge ideas and challenge things. So let me give you some examples. A lot of people think, oh, I didn't go to like some Ivy League school, or I didn't go to great school, or I don't have a degree, or I don't have, an MBA. So I dropped out of a university, and I know my grandmother was really upset about it. So was my grandfather. But what I learned was, if you look at like the top 20 richest people in the world, like people that you might know, like, Mark Zuckerberg, half of the world uses his products every single day. He dropped out of Harvard, and Mark started, a company called Facebook, and now it's called Meta, owns WhatsApp, Instagram. I mean, literally, like half of the communication on the planet is controlled by this dropout. And Steve Jobs was a dropout. Larry Ellison maybe isn't as famous, but I think he's the third or fourth richest man in the world, owns Oracle. Another dropout. And as you go through the list of, the man that created Uber, Travis Kalanick, dropout. Even Elon dropped out of his PhD program. He didn't get his undergraduate degrees. But when you start studying the most successful people of our time, most of these guys were dropouts. And the other thing that I find people our age think about is like, oh, I'm too old now. Like they get content. So then when you start researching, like, when do the most successful companies in history get started? Like, I'm going to give you some people that I really admire. Home Depot is probably a business I've frequented, about 1,000 times.
Me too.
It would be, I've spent millions of dollars at Home Depot. Well, Bernie Marcus that started, he was 49 years old when he started the company. Like, think about it. He started the company at 49. Steven Schwartzman at Blackstone, which, by the way, owns everything, he started the business at 38, okay? Leo Goodwin started Geico at 50. PeopleSoft, a software company. Dave Duffield started at 46. Ray Kroc, McDonald's, starts at 52. Sam Walton. I mean, how many of you won't go to Walmart this week? Like, just think about who's not going to get a Walmart delivery this week or going to go to Walmart. He started at age 44. Colonel Sanders, KFC, 15,000 locations, every country in the world, 62. Bank of America, started at age 45. Like, holy shit. And then you told me about a recent study, I think it was a venture capital study. Tell me about that one.
So there's a venture capital firm in Silicon Valley that commissioned a study to understand what are the makings of successful entrepreneurship and an entrepreneurial experience. And they did a very extensive study of thousands of businesses and entrepreneurs. And what they found was that the type of entrepreneur they should bet on, right? Because for them, it's all about risk, should be on average a man who's 55 years old and has had 3 other entrepreneurial ventures under his belt that have failed. When they bet on that type of entrepreneur, the likelihood of their bet being a good bet rises exponentially. Now, why do you think that is? Well, the answer is really simple. These folks have been in the game, they've made mistakes, and they've learned. So remember those 4 qualities of a successful entrepreneur that we talked about earlier, one of them being commitment, that you have to be willing to be bad at something. That includes being bad at business and startups. If your first startup is a success, that's a happy accident. It's a happy accident. Your first startup should teach you a bunch of things that you won't do in your second startup. And then your second or third startups, those are the ones that you could potentially have greater success with. But according to this Silicon Valley firm's study, it's the 4th startup with a 55-year-old man in business that is the best bet for them to put their money behind. That should tell you something if you're a man over 50 and you're listening to this.
I think it's so true. I think about all the really successful entrepreneurs. We know Mark's company sold for almost $1 billion to Oracle. But on our previous episodes, Mark's about how many failures he had before. We've all had so many failures, but it's the failures that's where you learn the skills. Yeah. We only learn from our failures. We don't learn from our successes. As human beings, we learn from our failures. You've got to have a lot of failures under your belt. One of the people I was talking to recently is a good friend of mine, Ken, and Ken was one of my first big investors. Extremely successful gentleman, been really successful his whole life. And I was talking about his new company, and he's like killing it with his new company. And I'm just proud of it because his son is now the CEO of the company.
That's cool.
But Ken says, Roman, he says, do you know when I started, his company is called Grata. He said, I don't know, he's been my friend for 20 years. He goes, Roman, I started that at 57. I'm like, holy shit. He goes, yeah, all my friends said I was crazy. They said, "What are you doing? Start a company, Ken, Ken, you're like, what are you doing? Like you've got money, you're successful. What do you do?" And he says, "Roman, I needed a purpose. I needed a goal." And he's killing it. And to watch that man with his son, and his son has really become like Ken. It's incredible to watch. So
Beautiful.
I don't care I don't care if you have no education, if you're a dropout, I don't care what age, there's no excuses. And I think right now is the most important time in history. We
It is.
absolutely live in the most important time in history, most exciting time. If anyone watched what Elon Musk presented to us a few days ago,
It's crazy.
if your mind wasn't blown, for those of you that didn't see the Tesla robot event, he literally had all these Tesla robots go out, walk, talking to the crowd, having natural conversations with the crowd. The Tesla robots were the bartenders, were making drinks for people, and like literally just, "Hey, I want, this Bloody Mary," and the things like puts together the Bloody Mary. Like, if people don't understand that these robots are coming to all of our houses and all of our businesses in the next year or two, this is going to change everything. When Elon says this will be the biggest product of all time, take him seriously.
Very seriously.
3-4 years ago, when he launched the Model Y, he said, "This won't just be the best-selling EV. This just won't be the best-selling SUV. This will be the best-selling car of all time of any manufacturer in any category." And guess what? It turned out to be true. You don't bet against Elon.
Never.
And when he tells you that he sees a market of billions of these machines, oh yeah, this is going to happen. And then when you see 60 of his self-driving cars driving around that event, oh my gosh. And then my parents yesterday, when I said to them, I said, "I really think you should consider this car. You get into it. It has no steering wheel. It doesn't have any pedals. You get in, you just tell it where it take you, and it takes you there. How great is that?" And I'm like, "And then I don't have to take you to your medical appointments. This is going to be great." And my parents were like, "We'd actually like that." So when my 78, 79-year-old parents go, this is going to change the world, Nikki. So anyone that's in an old paradigm, they have no idea what's about to happen to us with AI, with robotics, with autonomous cars. Nikki, this is a reality. This isn't science fiction. This is a reality. Every man needs to look in the mirror and go, if I don't get on top of this AI thing, if I don't figure out how to automate my business, they're going to be in the breadline in a couple of years. It's literally going to be the 1% versus the 99%. And the 1% are going to make all the money.
Unfortunately, you're right. And you also have to understand that this means #don't do it alone. #don't do it alone. So many people who are successful go into what my good friend Mark von Musser calls the hubris zone. This is the zone where someone's making somewhere between 2 and 10 million, and they think they got it all figured out. They don't think they need to learn anymore. They don't think they need anybody's advice. And Mark says it's the most dangerous place to be in business because the entire foundation of what got them successful is crumbling beneath their feet, right? What got them successful is a bit of humility, wanting to learn, wanting to push themselves. When you go in the hubris zone, you sit back, you think you're smarter than everybody else, and that's when things like AI and robotics and the changes in the world catch you unawares and knock you on your keister. So the thing I want to say, and this is really important, if you want a 10x life, a 10x health, a 10x set of relationships, if you want to 10x your income and revenues in your business, you cannot do this alone. And Roman, the reason you and I got connected is because we realized this. You're a man who's invested $1 million in personal development. You've never been someone who's let his ego get to the point of hubris. We all have egos. Egos are important. Egos are what have us take action and move forward in the world. But when you get to the point of hubris, that means you're not willing to listen to anybody else. And this whole 10X world, and I'd really like you to tell us the story of how you worked with, I think it was Chip Conk.
Yeah.
And tell us how this 10X came alive in your life.
I've seen it so many times. I mean, from the time I started working with the Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, I've had the privilege now of working with 5 startups that became billion-dollar brands. But this one was really powerful. So Chip Conk is an incredible entrepreneur, been very successful many times, and I learned so much from him. So one of the lessons was when you have a big idea, you need to set your goals, and everyone on the team needs to be aligned with the goals. It starts with your mindset and your goals. So he took all of us to meet Brian Tracy, which is also one of my heroes in life.
Huge, man.
So that was an easy sell for me. He's like, Roman, we're going to spend a day with Brian Tracy. I'm like, let me book a flight right now. So we go to San Diego. We spend a day with Brian Tracy, and we wrote some ridiculous goals. The big goal was we were starting a brand new company, a startup, and we're going to go from 0 to $1 billion in revenue in year 1. By the way, no one had done that before. Even OpenAI didn't do that. So that was a big goal. But what we did is we broke it down to the little things, like what do we have to do every day, every week, every month? And then we tied it to our personal goals and our health goals. It took an entire day. But at the end of that day, we're all incredibly aligned to here's the big picture, here's what we all want for ourselves, for our families, for our health, and it all ties to the big goal. But then the magic happened. Then Chip said, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. Every single day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every day, Monday to Friday, we're going to meet in this boardroom. 8:30 in the morning. No one's going to be late. We're never going to miss a day. And if you're traveling on business, you must be like logged in, on before Zoom, before Skype. We're just on conference calls. But there's no days off. Okay, like no one's missing it.
I love it.
And all we're going to do at the meeting is really quick. It's just going to say, hey, Nikki, what's the one thing that you did yesterday, that you accomplished yesterday to help us reach the goal? And today, Nikki, what's the one thing you're going to do that's going to help us reach your goal? And you have to go around the room really quickly. And Nikki, this is the hardest meeting of my life every morning. I'm like, what the heck did I do yesterday? That it can't be like, oh, I sent an email or I had a meeting. No. What did you achieve yesterday to help us to get to the goal? And what am I going to do today? And what it taught me was you've got to do your one big thing every day before you get tied up in bullshit. What's the one thing that you're going to do today that's going to move you towards the goal? We did that every day for 1 year. We closed on 5,000 condos. We sold condos, and some of them, and we had this conversation the other day, you're like, I think we can do $1 million a day. I said, yeah, I think we can, because I know how to get to $1 million a minute. We sold $1 million a minute for 90 minutes straight. So again, but why this happened, Nikki? Because it started with a mindset. It started with the goals and a mastermind group. Chip had a mastermind group, and what I loved about his mastermind group, he brought in the best people, but here's the coolest part. You ready for this?
Tell me.
Nobody could live in the city we're in. And I said, Chip, why are all of us like moving to a city where we have no friends and no family? He goes, because we're going all in. You can't be successful unless you're all in. And think about this.
It's true.
Why do immigrants, and you're a great example, when they come into a country, why do they kick ass? Why do they typically do way better than the people who've lived here their whole lives?
They burn the boats.
Right? You burn the boats, right? You burn the boats. When you go all in and you're not making excuses and you don't have all these family commitments and all this stuff, you're going all in. And that's what Chip Conk did. He brought a team into a city called Jacksonville, Florida, which nobody was from. Okay, we had no friends, we had no family. We committed every day to the goal. We did our one hard thing every day. And by 8:30, we had to report on what we did. And we reached $1 billion in less than 12 months. So that's when I learned the power of Mastermind.
Roman, that's very powerful. And you know that I buy into this, but I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment because on behalf of some people that you and I both know, how much time does this all take? You know what I mean? How can I make this work? I mean, I don't want to commit to something. I hear this all the time, and I know you do too. I don't want to be committing to something unless I know I'm all in. So I don't know if I can be all in. What do you say to these folks who are like thinking, oh my God, it's too much time?
Yeah, I think this is amazing. And I think 100% of people think that. So first of all, I just want a disclaimer. Not everybody wants to have $1 billion success story. So like, I'm going to assume that you don't need to meet every day with your mastermind group unless you want to do $1 billion startup. But most of us, if you want to 10x your revenue or 10x your income, you don't have to have a daily meeting. I do think a weekly meeting would be required. Even if you go to Weight Watchers, like every week you go to a meeting, they weigh you, there's accountability support. AA, I do believe they go daily. I think AA, they do recommend daily, and you have a sponsor. So we do know that this premise of getting together with like-minded people that support you, whether it's daily or weekly, is mission critical. But let's talk about time. So on day one of our mastermind groups, the first thing we do is we look at everybody's screen time. So this is really the aha moment for people. We look at your screen time because it's on all our phones, and we say, okay, Roman, How is it possible that you spent 5 hours of needless, regrettable time? Your 5 hours, and we start looking at where did that 5 hours go? TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X. Again, this is bullshit. When people go, well, I'm just posting for a business. Really? Okay. So if you're going to post in your business, you can use your PC or your desktop, and you can go spend your 30 minutes posting it. But we're talking about people's daily average screen time, 5 hours a day. That's the average now of regrettable time. It gets worse. Then we look at your Netflix. How much time are you spending on Amazon Prime Video and just watching, binging? I love when people go, Roman, I don't have time to watch those videos you send me. Really? But it's funny. I had a dinner party recently. It was my friend Ashley, and she's like, yeah, I don't have time to watch those, videos you send me. I said, really, Ashley? Because I think you and James watched Game of Thrones, and I don't think you missed an episode. That was 600 hours. 600 hours. So people can spend 600 hours on a TV show, but when you give them some really things that could catapult their lives, they don't have time. So I think the time is bullshit. I think that we need to look at where we're spending our time, Nikki, and for example, the morning routine, that will give you back. I get more done between 5 a.m. and 9 o'clock every morning than most people do an entire day because no one's distracting me between 5 and 9. Yeah. So let's talk about your morning routine and how you set yourself up the night before, because I think people need to understand how much time you get when you do a program like this.
First thing I do is I get up, I get ready, I go to the gym. I get a good, strong workout in. That's a good hour. And then I come and I read.
But let's talk about the time, because first of all, like what time are you going to bed? Let's start with like the night before, because to win the morning and to win the day, it starts the evening before. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I'm usually in bed 9:30, 10.
That's huge. What you just said there, I know people get obsessed about getting up at whatever early. Get obsessed about going to bed early, because when you go to bed early, guess what happens? About 7-8 hours later, your body wakes you up. You don't need an alarm clock.
No, you don't.
Like I'm sure probably 4:35. Your body's just waking you up.
I woke up this morning 2 minutes before my alarm was due to go off, and sometimes I wake up an hour before the alarm is meant to go
because your
off.
body's ready. It's rested. You've had your deep sleep. It's done what it has to do, and you're ready to go to work.
Yeah, and if I'm up that early, what I usually do is I read. I either read. I read like a book that I want to learn something from. So right now I'm really obsessed about nutrition and longevity, so I'm reading a bunch of stuff on that. Or I read a novel. I find reading fiction, I know a lot of people disagree with this, but I think they're wrong. There's something about good fiction that soothes the soul. It brings a level of peace, because how we connect with the world around us is through story, and good storytelling is good for the soul, in my view. So I spend a good half an hour to an hour and a half every morning reading. And people say to me, like, they don't have time to read. I've read 100 books so far this year, paper books.
Wow.
100 books. And the way that I do it is I read a little bit at night before I go to bed, but I usually conk out and fall asleep. But when I get up early in the morning and I get like an hour uninterrupted, man, that's a lot of time that I can read between 30 and 70 pages in an hour.
Wow.
You know what I mean? If people got up in the morning, if they'd go to bed with their phone out of the bedroom,
that's
very
key.
important.
That's the key.
Out of the bedroom, and put the red light on your phone, so the blue light's not coming there at night. So if you go to the bathroom, you want to check your phone, the red light's there, and you can still go back to bed, and you're not woken up right away by the blue light. And then you get up early in the morning, like you and I do, and instead of jumping on your phone and reading the news and getting all messed up by that, you read something.
Yes.
Wow. That on its own will give you a level of peace of mind, and it will also open you up to feeling like you have more time. You remember on Saturday when you and I met and we went on your boat to meet with our friend James, right? That morning, I did a workout. I came home. You and I had a few things we had to prepare for that meeting for. And, you were telling me, Nikki, do this. I'm like, okay. I got it all done. And in my mind, it seemed like, oh my God, this is like 3 hours worth of work. I got it done in 30 minutes. 30 minutes,
focused,
everything done. Focused because I went to bed early, because I didn't have my phone in my bedroom, because when you asked me to do the work, I just made a decision. I'm actually going to put the phone away and just do this on the computer, because on the phone,
Yes.
I might get a call by my lady.
Distractions, yes.
There might be a text I get from somebody. Blah 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 blah.
The phone is the enemy.
The phone is the enemy.
Yeah.
Put the phone down, do the work, and it's a process. I think of deletion. I want you to talk about deletion for a minute.
But I want to go one more thing, because this is really, we're getting into some deep stuff, and this is going to be life-changing for people to actually pay attention. So not only are you going to bed early, let's say 9:30 or 10 you're in bed, but Nikki, let's talk about alcohol. Are you drinking anything before that?
I don't drink.
So for those of you that think that, oh, I can just have the one drink before I go to bed, or have that glass of wine, this destroys your deep sleep. It destroys your REM sleep. I track this stuff. I'm pretty obsessive about all these devices that track this stuff. And if I have one alcoholic beverage, literally I can cut my deep sleep, my REM by 50%. One drink.
Crazy.
So people go, oh no, but Roman, I'm getting 7 hours sleep. I'm like, yeah, but all of the benefits are in deep sleep and REM sleep, and you've just destroyed it. Just that one drink. Now, I'm not saying you should never drink. Like we can celebrate in life, but if you can avoid that, let's say 5 or 6, days a week, it will be life-changing. Also, it's the greatest anti-aging, because alcohol is just toxic and it ages us.
It's poison.
And it's literally poison. So, but I just want people to understand that you're not drinking alcohol. You're in bed 9:30 at 10. Your body's waking you up by 5. You're doing the hardest thing first. And I don't know about everyone else, but I hate working out. Nikki, I hate it. Like, honestly, I would rather sleep in. I would rather do a million things. I don't want to get up at 5 in the morning and do my workout, but if I don't do my hardest thing first, it will never happen. I will find every excuse all day not to do it. That's why the first thing I do is I get up out of bed and I force myself to do it. Because if I don't do it then, Nikki, it's not going to happen. So again, do you feel the same way?
I do. And I set appointments with people to meet them. So this morning, my son trains me. You know that. My son trains me.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah, he's great. And then tomorrow, you and I have a 6 a.m. appointment to be at the gym.
Yes,
right?
we do. Yes, we do.
So, that what I do, Roman, to make sure that I'm not tempted to sleep in is I set up appointments to meet people to work out.
Yeah.
That forces me to go there, because I don't want to let you down. I want to let my son down. You know what I'm saying?
When you told me this, I thought this was the craziest deal I ever heard. And then I guess it was a couple weeks we did it the first time, and you're like, yeah, you're going to meet my friend Anthony. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to meet your friend Anthony, but I don't know if I want to do it working out. It was the most fun workout ever.
It really is.
We had so much fun. We connected at a completely different level. The next day he invites me to the most incredible real estate event. I've spoken at real estate conferences for 25 years. I've been in the biggest real estate shows in the world. I've spoken at all of them. And his was amazing. And it happened because at 6 a.m., we worked out the day before. And then at his event, and then at the event, we had all these mutual friends. I'm like, that never would have happened. So when you told me this, again, it's getting out of my comfort zone. And you're like, yeah, we're gonna have a meeting in the sauna. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? We're gonna have a meeting in the sauna? This is the craziest thing I ever heard. But you're absolutely right. Sometimes in life, you got to get out of your comfort zone. We have these limiting beliefs. I thought, no, a meeting is going to be we're going to have breakfast, we're going to have lunch, we're meeting in a boardroom. No, you're we're going to go have a meeting in a gym. It was the greatest thing. And we're doing it again tomorrow. But again, it's because you challenged my belief, this idea where nobody has meetings at a gym at 6 in the morning. It was so fun.
It is fun. And you do something that does double duty. So you get your workout in, which you need to do anyways, right? And you also move the ball forward to some important business priority at the same time. And you build a relationship with somebody. I mean, you saw that with Anthony. You just met him, right? You two didn't know each other before that day. By the end of the workout, you were fast friends. And then the other day, I reached out to Anthony and I sent him one of the clips from the podcast that you did, about masterminding, right? And I sent it to Anthony. I said, here's this clip. And he, you know what his response was? Roman is great. And I'm like, wow. Out of one meeting and then showing up at his conference, a relationship gets created. And that's how it is. And for the folks that are listening to this episode, this is the power of being in a mastermind for you. This is the power of having a morning routine. This is the power of learning to delete things that don't serve you. And this is the power of 10xing your thinking. 10xing your thinking is how you're going to 10x your income.
Just, something on this topic, I was thinking about this morning. A lot of people say, Roman, I can't get up early in the morning. And I say, that's not true. think about, like, I'm going to New York on Friday.
Yeah.
My flight's at 6 a.m. Nikki, I already know my body's going to wake me up at like 4 in the morning. It's time to go. Anytime you have a vacation, you book your flight, you get up for that flight, don't you? Like no one's missing their flight. We can absolutely do this. It's all about your desire. Are you serious about 10xing your life? Are you serious about stopping the excuses? Because if you're serious about stopping excuses, we can do it. We can get up early. We just have to go to bed early. So all of these things that people say, I can't do it, that's not true. Because every time you go on a vacation, I know you get up early for that flight.
100%. Every time. And it's true. And Roman, I want to kind of like land the plane on this conversation with this last piece, which is on the power of making a decision. And I want to come back to the Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich story. So a lot of people don't know Napoleon Hill's origin story. So I want to share it with you. And I know you've heard this before, but this is for the benefit of the audience. So before Napoleon Hill became Napoleon Hill, he was a journalist. He was a young fellow and he worked at a newspaper. And his boss gave him an assignment. He said, I'd like you to go interview Andrew Carnegie, the world's richest man, at his estate in Montauk, New York, or wherever the heck it happened to be. And this was this palatial, incredibly fancy, beautiful place. And so he went there and he met Andrew Carnegie, and he was like, oh my God, look at this place. Are you kidding me? And then he started to interview him. And back then, you know, people weren't as rushed about things. So he got to spend 3 hours with Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie took a shine to Napoleon Hill. And at the end of their time together, he said, Mr. Hill, how would you like to spend the weekend with me at my estate? I would like to talk with you further. I don't know about you, Roman, but if the richest man in the world told me, how'd you like to spend the weekend
it's like
at my estate?
If Elon called me and said, hey, do you want to spend the weekend together?
I'm like, I mean,
it's a pretty
whatever
easy
you
decision.
got going on, sweetie, can't make it. Catch you later. Right? So he sat with him, and they spent a weekend, which according to Hill was an incredible weekend. And Andrew Carnegie asked him a lot of questions, shared a lot of wisdom with him. And when the weekend came to a close, he said to him, Mr. Hill, I have a proposition for you. And he said, oh, well, what's that? He said, how would you like to spend the next 20 years researching and writing a book about my philosophy of success and bringing it to the masses, to the world?
20 years.
20 years. Yeah, this was the proposal.
Do you want to spend the next 20 years?
Now, it gets better. Here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to give you letters of introduction to the 500 most successful men and women in the United States. And he said, oh, wow, that sounds great. But here's the next part. He said, I will not pay you a stipend.
Wow.
But with these letters of introduction, you will absolutely get meetings with these men and women, and they will give you the time to interview them. And he said, what say you? Now, Napoleon Hill sat back, and this, what I'm about to say is very precise, and you'll find out why it matters in a moment. 31 seconds later, he said, yep, I'll do it. I'm in. Now, one of the things, Roman, I notice about you is you are a fast decider. When I first met you, I talked to you about a branding program that I was doing, and I told this. You said, okay, I'm in. And you said, here's a 50% deposit. I mean, I remember that. I'm going, this man gets it, right? So the rest is history, right? Because Napoleon Hill went and he interviewed those people, and he wrote Think and Grow Rich, and he became Napoleon Hill. And later in life, W. Clement Stone found that book and basically hired him to represent his companies until he died in 1970. What people don't understand is that 20 years later, after the book was published and become a big success, he went to meet with Andrew Carnegie at his estate one last time before the great man passed away. And as they were reminiscing, Andrew Carnegie said to him, Mr. Hill, I need to confess something to you. He said, oh, what's that? He said, all those years ago when we first met and I made you that offer, I had under the table this watch with a second hand on it. And in my mind, I'd given you exactly 60 seconds to give me an answer. And if you had not given me an answer in 60 seconds, I was going to pull the offer. Like Roman, he was like, oh my God, how close did I come to losing this world-changing opportunity? Yeah. And he just said, pardon me, sir, but why? And Andrew Carnegie kind of looked at him, shrewdly appraised him and said, yes, why indeed? You've studied my philosophy of success. Why would I have pulled the offer? And he said, let me think. He said, I got it. Successful people are fast deciders, And he said, yes, I knew you'd get it. He said, I want to tell you something. Before I approached you, I'd approached 4 of the most eminent educators in these United States. And I'd given them all the same offer. Every single one of them either said no or said, I'll get back to you in a week, a month. And inevitably, in a week or a month, the answer was no. And what I realized is they were the wrong people. Because in my experience, whenever I'm faced with a decision, I quickly gather the facts, and within seconds, I say yes or I say no. And all the successful people I know do the same thing. If you are a successful person, you will instantly understand the value of this. And if you listen to us right now and you go, well, I'm pretty successful, but I take my time making decisions. Here's what Andrew Carnegie would have said, that because you're taking your time making decisions, you're only 1/100th as successful as you could have been.
That's right. Think about how quickly Elon Musk makes decisions. Jeff Bezos says, even if you got 70% of the facts, make the decision. Bill Gates, Sergey Brin, Travis Kalanick from Uber, Adam Newman. You don't sit there and just process you make a decision, you move. It's about moving quickly. That's how you dominate. In the age of AI, that's moving faster than anyone can even imagine, you have to be a fast decision maker. It's one of my challenges actually doing business in Canada. So my business was built around the world, 15 countries, 5 continents. And my training ground was Toronto because this is where I'm from. But Nikki, I got to tell you, the moment I got out of Toronto and started selling around the world, it was so much easier. Let's use US as an example. Oh, yeah. You could be on a conversation with somebody in the US. If they don't like what you have to say, they just hang up on you. There's no there's no maybe. In Canada, and I'm talking about friends of mine too, well, think about it next quarter, next year. This is a Canadian disease.
It is.
And it's why Canada is the least productive country in the G7. It's actually in the top in the top 50 countries in the world. We're now the least productive, and the top 50, not just the G7. We have this disease about just complacency. We can't make a decision. It's horrific. This is almost as bad, maybe as bad as the woke virus. Yeah. This is the complacency virus where nobody can make a goddamn decision.
I like that. That's good. The complacency virus.
The complacency virus. This is almost as deadly as the woke virus, but it's destroying Canada. It's completely destroying our country. I even see with my kids, make a decision. I don't know. No, make a decision. We have to learn how to make decisions. So if you're sitting, and listen, anyone that's listened to us so far, I applaud you, because I know there's something in your life you want to change. Maybe you want to have abs like Nikki does at, what are you, 57 now?
57.
So few men in their entire lives ever get abs. It's actually 8 times easier to become a millionaire than to have abs.
That's crazy.
And what you've accomplished at 50 is mind-blowing. So I don't know if somebody's watching this because they want to be in the best health of their life. I'm actually in the best health of my life. I'm obsessed with health. I got all these genetic tests. And now they're telling me I'm like 14 years on some tests, some 16 years younger than I really am. And then I look at pictures and people go, yeah, I can't believe your age. I'm like, yeah, I'm reversing my aging. I figured this thing out. So I don't care if it's health, if it's income. I've 10x my income. I've 10x revenue. We know how to do this. But if somebody's listening and you want to make a decision to change your life, reach out to us. We'll put you in the right group. We know the men that can help you do it. And the reason I say men is again, I understand men really well. I'm still trying to figure out women. Women are very complicated. I'm having a hard time with that. But I understand men, and I understand a group of men that can be on the same frequency and the same thing.
Yeah.
They're unstoppable. We cannot do this alone. Nikki, if I could have done this alone, I would have done it. If you could have done this alone without your coach, you wouldn't have done it. If you're sitting here watching, goes, I'm going to do it myself. No, you would have done it by now. You would have lost the weight. You would have had the 10x income. You would have had the dream house. You would have been living the life of your dreams. You don't have it because you haven't surrounded yourself with a mastermind group, a group of men that are pushing you and will hold you and call you on your bullshit. We need that.
We need that more than anything. And one thing I want to say, folks, if you're listening to this and you're wanting something more for yourself, make a decision to just contact Roman or myself and have a conversation. come to a meeting. We host these incredible meetings currently at your home, but we're going to have other venues for them as well.
Yeah.
And it's a private, intimate gathering of men, of businessmen who are successful. And it's an opportunity for you to expand your network. And if you're in business, you got to understand you're one great relationship from transforming your whole life.
One meeting. Like when I met Chip Conk, my life changed. When I met Manpreet Chadha, which is the largest landowner in Wave, and we built the world's first smart city. Not only did it change my life, we changed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people that now live there. One meeting can change your life.
One meeting, one relationship, one transformation
can change your whole life. One conversation can change your life. And yes, we're starting my house in Toronto, but this weekend, next weekend, I'm having my first meeting in New York.
Yeah,
we're having a meeting in Costa Rica coming up. We've got meetings planned in Palm Beach, Naples. I don't care where you're watching from. Reach out to us. If you're really serious about 10xing a part of your life, reach out to us.
Please do. And here's the best part. Coming to one of these initial meetings isn't going to cost you anything. They're free. You're going to be with a high-level group of men. You're going to learn something. You're going to expand your network. And you're going to get a delicious, healthy, free meal out of it at the same time. You can't go wrong with that. Just reach out to us. And let's have a conversation. Let's see if it's a fit for us to invite you.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us in a special edition of the Best Half Show. Have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.